Good morning, and welcome back to another day of Dairy Sheep. I am your host, Becca, and this is Diary of a Dairy Sheep Farmer. And I am exhausted. I have been working on fixing fence for, I don't know, it seems like forever. I have sheep that keep getting out, but I can't figure out where. So I have been babysitting my sheep and watching them, and it's only three. Well, okay, not it's between 3 and 5, but it's always the same three. The other two kind of sometimes it's the same two, sometimes it's not. And I cannot figure. Now, on the plus side, they're getting out on my own property. They're not going to the neighbor's property, but it's driving me absolutely batty. Cannot figure out where the little buggers are getting out at, and they're going into a field that the fencing is worse than anywhere else on my property. And I don't really want them in there because there's old tires, there's fencing that's come down, there's old barbed wire that is just laying on the ground. It's a very bad pasture for them to be in. I don't want broken legs. I don't want tore up legs. I don't want them wrapping it around their necks. I just don't want them in there until I have time to clean it up and make it usable. So I'm trying very hard to figure out where the little snots are getting out at. And it's exhausting and frustrating. So I think over the weekend, this next coming weekend, my husband and I are going to do some spy work and see if we can figure out where they are getting out. Because I'm at my wit's end. I'm almost to the point of just shipping them and getting rid of them so that they are no longer an issue. But one of them is a extremely good ewe and has extremely good lambs and is about to lamb here in 30-ish days, 35-ish days. So I'm not really keen on getting rid of her yet. But we did start breeding, let's see, about a week ago now on the 7th. And I'm hoping for the best. January breeding is kind of a hit and miss for me. I didn't do anything fancy. I just literally threw the rams in. It's a small group because they will be lambing about the time I am in hay. I will be first cutting hay, should hit the ground sometime in June, about the same time these girls will start lambing. And I will be overwhelmed, especially since it's only a 30, 31, 30, 32, somewhere in there group of ewes. And I purposely kept it small because half of them are first time ewes and they take a little more attention. And I knew I wasn't going to have a ton of time because I was going to be split between the lambing and the hay, trying to get hay up, trying to get it baled and stacked. And I knew I was not going to have my full attention to do a huge group. Which is why I decided not to do all of the 60-something ewes I still have left to breed. So I will be doing a summer breeding this year. Not really sure how that's going to work out either. But hey, we're here for the chaos, right? So let's talk about this breeding group because I do twice a year what is called a terminal breeding group. And that is when I put in a terminal ram and I don't keep any of the lambs from those ewes that are in with the terminal ram. And basically what a terminal ram is, it's basically just a ram that you use that you're not going to keep any of the babies from. In the meat world, it's usually where you are trying to beef up your lambs. So you want basically your best ram with your best ewe for your stockiest lambs. It's specifically just to produce lambs that are used for the meat market. I don't tend to worry about that so much. I'm just using them because I don't keep any of those lambs, so I don't worry too much. I have a couple rams that are not spectacular for milking lines, and so they're the ones that I use for my first time lambers. They're a little smaller. They have smaller lambs, and I prefer them because then I don't have to worry about if they're going to throw a really, really good lamb. Now, there are exceptions. There's always exceptions because sometimes those first time lambers will have an exceptional lamb, especially if they are from one of my exceptional milking lines. Then there's always exceptions to the rules. I will keep those lambs, especially if they're a girl. But for the most part, in general, normally, if I have a terminal breeding group, I get rid of all of the lambs. All the boys, all the girls, doesn't matter. I do not keep them. Personal reasons, because I do not typically want my first time lambers to have twins. I aim for them to have singles. It is easier on them. It's easier on me. And there's just less stress in the barn. And so I don't flush them. I don't excess feed them. I do my best to make sure all of the elements are dumbed down, I guess is the best way to explain it, so that they are not growing more than one lamb. And that's part of why I like doing them in the later months rather than in the, what would you call it, in the prolific months of breeding, when dairy sheep are normally, since they're seasonal breeders, when they're normally in season, which would be, your September, October, November, December, January. You could push it into February. So if they just have the one lamb, it's less stress on them, less stress on me. And then when they go into their second year of lambing, that's when I bump them up to everything they should have, the better feed, the flushing, the grain. Well, I don't usually grain, but everything that they should have for the multiples. And it seems to work fairly well. Normally, if they have, normally on their second year, I do get twins, sometimes triplets, which I don't like either, but that's a whole different episode. My goal with my first time ewes is less stress. So less stress in my world, is to keep them from having multiples, and I just don't worry about trying to grow those lambs very, very fast. So they stay with mom for as long as I can let them. I don't try to beef up the lambs. I just let nature take its course, and then I just sell them. That way there is less stress on moms, less stress on lambs, and they seem to have a better experience. Could just be all in my head, but it works in my world. So that is why I just prefer the first time ewes to have a single lamb. But back to the terminal breeding. Why? Why do I do that? Why do I not keep lambs for my first time ewes? Again, it's personal reasons. Not everybody does it. I used to never do it. I used to keep every single ewe lamb from every single ewe that lambed on my farm because I was growing my flock. Didn't matter if they were good, didn't matter if they were bad, didn't matter. I kept it regardless. And I kept a lot of bad sheep that I had no business keeping. But I can afford to be more picky now. I have to be more picky now since it is just me dealing with everything. First time moms are not always good moms. And so I tend to have, not always, but I have to fight with my ewe lambs, the first timers, to get them to take the lambs. Sometimes they just walk off and leave them. Sometimes they refuse to let them nurse. I have a love-hate relationship with first-time moms. Rather than me having to raise their lambs all the time, I just sell them. I sell them as bottle babies. I don't mess with them anymore. If a first time ewe doesn't take their lamb, I just sell it. And I do give my first timers that buffer because they are first time moms. They don't get it all the time. It doesn't click in their little brains. So I will give them a second chance to be a mom. And usually by their second year, they're way better. I do, since I have changed to waiting longer to breed my ewes, they do a lot better. But it's just easier on me than trying to save every single lamb for myself and thinking that I got to grow my flock. I have to keep everything. If I just throw a terminal ram in and do a terminal breeding group and I tell myself from the start, that's it. I'm not keeping any of these lambs because they are from first-time moms. This ram is not fantastic. He's not something I want to keep babies out of. I don't put that pressure on myself to say, yep, I got to keep them all. I can just let it go and let the lambs go. They can go to new homes. I don't have to overthink it. I don't have to worry about it. Again, there are exceptions. This last group that had lambs, there were a couple of first-time moms in there, and there are a couple lambs that I will be keeping because they are just, how do you not? When they are absolutely gorgeous. The mom, I don't know who the dads are on some of them, but the moms they're fantastic mothers. They come from really good milking lines. I just can't not keep those lambs. And a couple of them are tricolored. And if you followed me, you know I'm a sucker for a tricolored or any colored lamb. So I do have a couple that I will be keeping from my November lambing group. And even though I shouldn't, but I'm going to anyway, because that also was a terminal group. It was my husband's bright idea just to throw the whole ram flock in with a group of ewes and see what happened. And surprisingly, it worked better than I thought it was going to. He got about a 51-ish% cover rate, and that's a lot better than I thought he was going to do. So in our world, we call that a win. So for the 16 ewes that will be lambing for the first time in June, I don't think I'm going to keep any of those lambs. To be honest, I don't remember exactly who's in that group. I don't think there's any of my favorites. And the ram that is in there now, he is also a first-time ram. he is one of my favorites. And eventually, I'm only using him as a terminal this time because he is a first timer, and I kind of want to see what his lambs will turn out to be before I make that call that he's going to be like bumped up to the main line of my flock. His mom is like one of my best milkers. She can milk for days. And his dad was one of my top rams. So he has the potential is there for him. So that's, we'll see. We'll see. Rams are hard. I'm a sucker for a good ram. I don't like to get rid of rams. I collect them and it bothers my husband, but oh well, they're my sheep. He doesn't get a say anymore. He's not here. So I have no idea if any of this has made any sense. Like I said, I am very overtired. But hopefully it has at least made a little bit of sense as to why I use a terminal ram. Most people use terminal rams. You know, their sheep are intended for the meat market. They're selecting them for fast growth, bigger body frame, a heavier weaning weight, and they're not keeping them for replacements, which I'm not either. The only one of those that I am looking at is the not keeping for replacements because I have dairy sheep, and so I'm not really in the meat market world. My terminal breeding groups are basically just to keep things easier on my first time to keep things easier on my first time lambers, easier on myself, and so that I know I'm not keeping anything as replacements. Okay, I think I'm going to wrap that up here for today. I appreciate you sticking with me through all of my chaotic rambling. I think we are getting closer to lambing, and I think if I look at my calendar, what is next? So hopefully the next episode, if I keep on schedule. So that'll be in February. So we'll talk a little bit next time about maybe lambing supplies. And I know I've done episodes on lambing supplies before. I said at the beginning that it was going to be more of what I actually use on the farm and for the dairy and for the sheep compared to what, just everybody says you need and you have to buy and all that kind of stuff. So I think what I'm going to do is make a list of everything that I actually have for lambing supplies and what I actually use, because those are very, very different lists. One is quite extensive and one is not. So, yeah, maybe I'll do that for next time, and we'll do an interesting comparison because I have bought a lot of things that everybody says you need for lambing. And when I first started out, I thought I needed all those things. Yeah, let's plan on that for next time. We'll see you then.